you're watching this, this is going to be something. This is a very, very special episode of the slate after we got all the kinks worked out. You know, we've had people that have worked here for a couple of years, can't figure out how to go live. It's okay. It's Friday. It's after a long weekend for some. Gary, not a long weekend for you. Okay. It was 4th of July. That's America's thing.
Canada Day on the Friday, but
okay,
it's fine.
Was it?
No, it was. I took it off.
Is that a long weekend for you guys too?
Yes.
Oh.
It's our Independence Day.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I'm not exactly cultured in Canadian national history.
You don't have a passport. That's fair.
I don't have a passport. Yeah. Like, you can come and go between Canada and the United States. I get stopped at the border unless I get smuggled in.
Well, you're a person of interest in their defense.
That is true. That is true. They that is the guy who bet Robbie Ray. Anyways, it's a very special edition of the slate. You see no Matt Lamarca. He's off for the next 9 weeks or something like that. That could be wrong, but that's just what I think. So instead, Garen's going to be filling in for the next 2 weeks because I'm off next week. And then Garen's going to be on today and next week. So very special. Make sure you tune in every Friday. And this is going to be a good show because we're not putting up our bukes. There's no thorn in anybody's side. It's just two bros talking about baseball and what you should be playing and betting tonight. That's how we like it. That's how we're going to do this tonight. So let's just get right into it. Let's look at this 14-game main slate starting at 7:05 p.m. Eastern. No real weather concerns tonight. Every team is on the slate except for the Rays and the Reds, which is actually disappointing because that's probably the best pitching matchup on the night. You got Shane McClanahan, who is your future American League Cy Young, going against Luis Castillo, the next starter for the Boston Red Sox. It's going to be a great matchup tonight. So look forward to that one there. But you look at this 14-game main slate. Let's get right into the pitching matchups here. The 5 most expensive options on the slate. You got NESTOR, CORTES, Zach Wheeler, Sonny Gray, Tyler Anderson, who I still cannot believe is pitching as well as he is, and Charlie Morton, who should be about $3,000 less than $9,200, but we'll discuss that in just a moment. Off the jump here, I don't think I'm really overly excited or looking to play anybody in this range except maybe Zach Wheeler because of how bad the Cardinals bats have been, especially of late. I was just going through some numbers today for some of my best bets, and they haven't scored more than 3 runs in 5 straight games. They're averaging 1.8 runs over the last 5 games. The bats have just gone absolutely silent, which is pretty shocking for how well this team has been playing. Now you got Zach Wheeler, who just faced this team. I think it was last week in his last start. 7 shutout innings, 4 hits in that one, only 5 strikeouts, which is a bit of a disappointment, but 26.8 DraftKings fantasy points in that one. I feel like he has to be the top option in the top tier of guys, but of course you are free to discuss.
I mean, it's going to be a really weird pitching slate. I think that Wheeler, like you said, is the guy that most people are going to gravitate towards if you're looking to spend over $9K. Although I would probably say that most people aren't going to be looking to spend over $9K. They might not even be looking to spend over $8K.
Right.
On this particular slate, because there's a very, very strange tier of pitcher that even if you want to toss Zach Gallen into the mix at 8,300, I mean, why not? He's been pretty good. I know he's had some hiccups as of late, but has been amazing for the majority of the season going up against a Rockies team, not in Colorado. So it's a very appealing matchup, but you start with Gallen. Then you've got someone like John Gray at 8K, who's quietly been one of the best pitchers in the American League the last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Blake Snell's coming off a double-digit strikeout game against the Dodgers his last time out. Lucas Giolito looks like maybe he's fixed his problems. I don't know if I trust it so much, but I feel like people are going to be gravitating towards that in a juicy matchup against the Tigers. And even on the other side of that, Tarek Skubal also has been really bad lately, but someone a lot of people probably remember being very good at the start of the season. A lot of strikeout upside. He's just $7,600. And then you finish things off with Aaron Ashby at $7,400. Another great matchup against the Pirates. This is the one that really fascinates me because Ashby has kind of been terrible. He just keeps disappointing every single time he goes out there, despite the fact he's got some of the best peripheral statistics in all of baseball. You look at his Fangraphs page and you're like, wow, this guy's great. And then you watch him pitch and go, oh God, I'm setting my money on fire. What am I doing? And he even had a bad start his last time out against the Pirates. However, the thing that really fascinates me about the Pirates is there is no team in baseball that is more left-handed than the Pittsburgh Pirates, not even including Brian Reynolds, who's a switch hitter. 8 of their 13 position players on their roster are left-handed batters. So you have to figure at least 4 guys in the Pirates lineup tonight, maybe 5, are going to be left-handed going up against Aaron Ashby, who strikes out basically a third of the left-handed batters he's faced so far this season. So maybe you don't want to use Ashby in too many lineups just because of the inconsistency he's had at the major league level. But I do think, considering he's in this tier of pitcher where I think a lot of these guys could get some attention, I don't know if any one of those 6 is going to be so popular that it's going to make me want to avoid them just for a little bit of differentiation. So I think Ashby could be a really nice play.
Who does Ashby look like?
Kind of like if Jay Happ got punched in the face.
I was thinking Keanu Reeves with short hair.
I could see it, maybe.
Right? It's been bothering me for a couple of weeks now, and that's what I've landed on. Weird
smirk on his face that's sort of throwing me off a little bit.
This is going to probably screw up things, but I think that's Keanu Reeves with short hair.
I can see the eyes. Sure. He's got Keanu eyes.
I've been wanting to ask somebody, but it's kind of awkward just to bring it up out of the blue. So this was a great opportunity.
You don't want to just walk around downtown Boston with a picture of Aaron Ashby being like, who
no.
Like?
Right.
I lost my son.
I've really been trying to figure it out, and I'm glad I finally got the opportunity, because once you started talking about it, I'm like, there's my chance. Yeah, Jay Happ a little bit too. Yeah, I could see it.
Just like a long, skinny face.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
All right. We're going to move on. I'm with you on Ashby. And the frustrating thing about him is the strikeout upside is immense. Pirates are one of the most strikeout prone teams in the league.
Yep.
Ashby's got phenomenal strikeout upside. Like, if you think about the Brewers starting pitchers that have great strikeout upside, Ashby's not going to be the first or second guy you're going to come up with, but he should be in that conversation. And I do really want to use him tonight, even with what you said. But the problem is he doesn't go deep into games. And, he just faced his Pirates club and they knocked 4 runs off of him. And I'm like, could that have been like an anomaly? And that he's going to come out this time? And because again, even in that game, when he was knocked out after 3 2/3 inning, he still struck out 6.
Yeah.
Now imagine what kind of game we're talking about if he was able to escape any of that and didn't give up those 4 runs.
And the one thing I will say that I like about Ashby, and again, you don't know what you're going to get from him every single start, but as opposed to, some of the other pitchers who are like transitioning from a bullpen role, I think Tyler Wells, who's someone we might even talk about as a viable option tonight. The big knock I have with Wells, for as much as I like him on this slate at his price point, is it seems like Baltimore is being really careful with how much they pitch Tyler Wells. I believe he's only gone over 90 pitches in a single start this season, and it was his last start. That's a little worrisome. Two times. That's a little worrisome, because it shows that, even that start against Seattle, where he's having a really good game, comes out at 63 pitches. I mean, clearly they want to manage his innings and limit him. And you don't know which starts they're going to pick and which times they're going to kind of pull the throttle back. Where at least with Ashby, we've seen him go over 100 pitches a couple times. So it seems like he has free reign, if he's pitching well, to go deep into games. It's just that he walks every 4th guy who comes to the plate and wastes a lot of pitches. So, there's positives and negatives. I think we both agree. I think we both wrote up this prop in each of our respective gambling articles this morning. If you don't want to attack Ashby and DFS, just take him at plus money to go over 6.5 strikeouts tonight.
Yes, no doubt. And the funny thing about Wells, and this is a great point that you brought up, is that, some may say, well, wouldn't you want to play Wells against the Angels because of the immense strikeout upside? They are one of the most strikeout teams, prone teams, period. That's actually a bad thing when you think about it, because if he's using all these pitches now to strike out these guys, what does that do? That drives up the pitch count, right? So now, realistically, let's just say he goes out and this last game against Minnesota is a perfect example. Let's say he goes out and strikes out 7 guys. If you're striking out 7 guys and you're on like a limited quote unquote pitch count, can you guarantee you're going to go 6 innings? Probably not, right? Like, it's very possible that you're out after 5 innings. So there's that there. So yes, the upside is good, but when you're facing these teams that strike out a lot and they're going to swing and miss on a lot of pitches, you're also driving up your strike count. So it's just kind of something to think about too as well. But I'm with you on Wells. He was actually going to be someone I was going to bring up as a potential value play, but those red flags are there because, quite frankly, if you're not using Wells, where do you really go for value? Do you want to go to Ross Stripling? Like, not really.
Not really.
No, not really. I mean, he's been great, but he's not a great fantasy pitcher.
Yeah,
right. Like
that upside there.
There's a big difference there. You can still be a good pitcher, but you're not necessarily a good fantasy pitcher. I mean, for as good as Stripling has been, his surface numbers, his advanced numbers are all great. Averaging 8.8 DraftKings fantasy points for a reason, right? 49 strikeouts through 62 and a third innings. That's not very good, right? You're not getting the fantasy points that way. Detmers against Baltimore, even though Baltimore's numbers against lefties aren't great, I'm not screwing with that Baltimore team right now.
Nope.
That, you know what? For what it's worth, I'd say Baltimore right now, that's a team I'm staying away from. I don't care what their season-long numbers say or what anything like that. That team is putting up runs lately, baby. That team is hitting. And they might destroy Reed Detmers today, if I'm being quite honest. I think they will, actually. Yeah. Ever since that no-hitter, Reed Detmers, I think that might have been his claim to fame when this is all said and done, the way he's been pitching lately, okay? But the funny thing about that Baltimore team, for as, quote unquote, bad as they've been against lefties, that lineup historically mashes lefties.
Yeah, it's very good against lefties.
So good against lefties, but for whatever reason, they're all not hitting well. The exception of Mountcastle. He's still hitting lefties well, but like Hayes hasn't had the numbers against lefties he's had before. Who else am I missing? Hayes, Mountcastle, Mancini. Thank you. Yeah. Mancini hasn't had the numbers against lefties like I said before, but they have all done it before.
He did last year. Yeah.
It's going to change. This might be your guy to do it against. If anything, I'm actually stacking the Orioles tonight.
I would be with you on that.
So that really kind of limits what we have altogether. So I think the only guy that I'd be interested in tonight that we haven't really touched on is Jose Urquidy going against the Oakland Athletics, because the Oakland Athletics are just the punching bag of Major League Baseball at this point. Like they're putrid. Urquidy is one of those extreme hit or miss guys, I think, when it comes down to it. But the strikeout upside is there. Usually goes deep into games. Not overly expensive. If he was 9,200, I'd pass. 8,200, I could screw with that.
I mean, he's interesting too because he's someone who has really crazy home road splits this season. He's been terrible outside of Houston, but the flip side of that is not only because of the lineup that inhabits this ballpark, but the Coliseum is the best pitcher's ballpark in all of baseball. So I would kind of throw those road splits out the window for Urquidy tonight. I think honestly, again, I'm not saying I wouldn't have, some exposure to Zach Wheeler, whether that's like 10%, 20%, somewhere in that range, because I think he's that good.
Yeah.
But I think my general strategy tonight would be to take two of these mid-tier guys, whether it's ASHBY, whether it's, let me talk about John Gray for a second, because I do think people, much like the Orioles, I think people are probably not going to be wanting to mess around too much with the Twins right now. They're a very hot offense in their own right. Carlos Correa is back in the lineup tonight after missing their last game on Wednesday. But Gray, sort of sneakily, because he had a roller coaster of an April. Lost his first game of the season, immediately went on the IL, came back, wasn't great, went on the IL again. And it was like, oh, wow, every single person the Rangers gave money to this offseason has just been absolutely terrible. Yep. And it's turned around for like all three of their major free agent signings really since the start of June, let's say. And Gray, in his last 7 starts, has an ERA hovering just over 2.5, and he's got a strikeout rate of 30%, which, we always knew John Gray was a really talented pitcher. He was a top 5 pick. He just happened to pitch half his games in Colorado. And now that he doesn't have to do that, I think he's really starting to flash some really nice stuff. And this is someone who always had great peripheral numbers. When you look past his like bloated Coors ERA. So I think Gray could be a nice little variance play because, again, he's in that tier with a bunch of other guys that I think people are going to be far more interested in their matchup, whether it's Urquidy, whether it's Gallen, whether it's Lucas Giolito. Do you have any interest in playing Giolito tonight? Because I don't.
Nope, not at all. And here's a big reason why. People are going to see him at 7,800. They're going to say, oh, he's pitched well in his past few starts. I'm going to get back on the bandwagon. That's exactly what he's going to do to a lot of poor people who don't watch this show tonight, and then he's going to implode again. For what it's worth, too, the Tigers have won 5 in a row.
Yeah.
The Tigers have won 5 in a row.
The Orioles and the Tigers are the hottest teams in baseball.
Madness. It's coming to the All-Star break. You can tell everybody just about had it. because that's the time when the Tigers and the Orioles flourish. Now we just need the Reds to start heating up or something like that. But yeah, I have no interest in the Tigers, and it also might be in Giolito, because I think it's some recency bias, because I think I've played like 3 or 4 guys against the Tigers lately, and they've all done awful. And so now I'm just like shunned by the Tigers, and I can't go against them.
I think they've been a lot, I don't want to say a lot better since Riley Green got called up, but I really think he does a lot to lengthen their lineup.
No, 100%.
And Miggy not hitting for power anymore. All-star Miguel Cabrera, we should say. Right. That dude's hitting 310 this season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, there are still some pieces in this. Javi Baez is really starting to heat up the last couple of weeks. Like, there are things to be worried about in the Tigers lineup. Maybe it's still even a league average lineup, but yeah, I'm not, especially if Giolito is going to be rocking an ownership above 20% tonight, which I think he probably will.
Yeah.
I just don't want any piece of that. And I would even say another one of my best bets tonight, I just want to attack that game in terms of the total any way you can.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's sitting at 8 for the game, but the first 5, the total's sitting at 4 runs.
Yep.
4? Oh my God. You've got Tarek Skubal with a 9 ERA across his last 5 starts going up against a team that crushes left-handed pitching. I'm taking all the overs I can get in on this game.
That was the first bet I talked about on MLB Central this morning. I said I expected that because usually when I look at the board, I have an idea in my head what it's going to be before I even get there. I was fully expecting 4.5 with juice.
Oh yeah.
So when I saw 4, I was like, what? Okay, sure. Yeah, this is one of those scary things when it's like, when you get a total like that, you're like, what am I missing? Right? Like, what is it?
Are you still feeling burned by the Caprillion Barrios under?
So, man, you know, when you're taking over and it involves the Oakland Athletics, you reap what you sow. You know, that's really what it is. But honestly, I have no regrets about putting that out there, because everything was there. Right.
Oh, I agree.
Everything was there.
I know some of the smart ass comments you deal with these things.
Oh yeah. Yep. 100%. You know, saying that, you know, once I give out my play, then the fix is in, and it's like, please spare me. Okay. They don't pay me enough for a fix to be in. All right. Give me a break. But I'm with you there. Okay. Real quick, before we change over the hitters, I want to just throw 2 names at you. I just want quick things if you want. Cortez hasn't been as solid as he's been in the first couple of months of the season. His numbers are still fantastic across the board. Matchup against Boston, in Boston, I should say. He's been a little bit shaky. He's the most expensive guy on the slate. Is he worth going up 10-1 for, or is he just someone you're keeping on the board? I want no part, not because of the matchup per se. I just don't want no part because of the salary.
Yeah, I would say the only real positive thing I could spin with Cortez, aside from what you're saying, that he does have fantastic stats across the board, is I don't think anyone's going to use this guy tonight. So if you really do just want to have a slate where, in theory, you can have the most expensive pitcher at 0 ownership, maybe you want a piece of that a little bit in a huge GPP. But again, I just think there's so many viable options that I'm not super, aside from the Giolito stuff, I'm not really too worried about ownership on this slate, just because I think there's so many different directions people can go.
Yep, that's fair. And then Pablo Lopez, also someone who's been kind of faltering as of late. His numbers are still phenomenal across the board, really just indicative of how good he was to start the year. But going up against this red hot Mets team who just poured 10 runs on the Marlins, I think it was actually more than that, but on them yesterday, Lopez struggled against this team. This is really kind of where things started to fall apart for him lately. Last month, 5 1/3 innings, 8 hits allowed, 7 runs, 6 of them earned. Did strike out 5 in that one to somewhat salvage him into positive fantasy points, if you can put somewhat of a spin on that, at 10,200. But thoughts on him tonight? I actually am thinking about stacking against him, if I'm being brutally honest.
Yeah, I don't really have too much of an interest in playing Lopez. You know, just rule of thumb too with Marlins pitchers. Obviously, you'd prefer them to be in Marlins Park as opposed to on the road. And also Lopez just doesn't really stand out. Like, you know, when we talk against using Aaron Ashby, when we give the case against, there's always that huge pro that is massive strikeout upside. Pablo Lopez just doesn't really have that same level of crazy upside that makes you kind of forget some of the red flags. So I think I'd rather go other places than Lopez tonight.
All right, switching over to the offensive side, let's talk about some of the stacks you can do in this one. I honestly think my favorite stack is Baltimore tonight. I really do. I think going against Detmers, going against that Angels bullpen, I think that's where I'm going. And nobody on the Orioles is overly expensive. Austin Hayes batting in the cleanup spot. Excuse me. Cedric Mullins is the most expensive, followed by Austin Hayes in the cleanup spot. That's your most expensive guys on here, 5,500 and 4,700. After that, everybody is 4,400 or below. But again, we're talking about a team that has hit lefties extremely well throughout their careers. Hasn't come through so far this year, but Detmers has just been such a liability for the Angels that, like, I think people still have it in their head, like, oh, we just threw this no-hitter, a couple months ago. He's great. He's not. He's been anything but great. So the Orioles feel like dollar for dollar, probably the best stacking option on this slate that I have come across, unless you have something different. But I really think Baltimore is my favorite stack tonight.
No, I really do like the Orioles. I would say I was really liking the White Sox, and I still like them. I won't speak ill of this stack, but obviously you would have preferred Andrew Vaughn be in the lineup because he was just such a nice piece hitting second at 4K. But that being said, AJ Pollock, who's actually had a better season against left-handed pitching than Vaughn has had, him sliding into that 2 spot is also incredibly appealing. And then you've got, just huge bats who you don't normally see for less than 5K in Jose Abreu and Eloy Jimenez.
Yep.
Jimenez down at $4,100 just seems wrong. Sebi Zavala is even someone who's been making really good contact. I mean, his expected numbers are pretty nice. So there's a lot of different ways to make this a cost-effective stack, even with someone as expensive as Tim Anderson leading off. Surprisingly, staying in the American League Central, the offensive haven that it is, both the Royals and the Guardians you could talk me into tonight. I just have zero respect for this pitching matchup. I don't know who I dislike more, Aaron Savale or Brady Singer.
Yeah.
Singer in particular he had 2 really nice months, and I don't think anyone believed in it, but he started the season really well. His last 6 starts have been absolutely atrocious. He's giving up over 2 home runs per 9. Specifically, he struggled with left-handed bats. So, if you want to get Jose Ramirez, obviously, as the start of that, then kind of play around with Quan leading off. Not a power guy, obviously, but might get 5 plate appearances tonight. Josh Naylor's in a really nice spot. Fran Mills at least started to hit better since coming off the IL, and is really cheap. So, there's a lot of ways to build that Guardian stack. And then for the Royals, you've got another home run prone pitcher in Aaron Savale, who is just terrible, particularly on the road. Like, you could basically put any split together and this guy's bad. But on the road, opponents are hitting 345 off of Savale on the road this season. So, you've got Bobby Witt Jr. back in this lineup. He's the most expensive bat. I think this is like the Vinny P game. I think this is I feel bad for the guy. Like, even his first career home run was that weird, it hit the fence and then he got thrown out at second base and he's walking off the field and they're like, no, that was a home run. Yep. I think he actually puts one in the seats tonight. It's going to be his first real home run off of Aaron Savale. But, we talk about this all the time, actual numbers versus expected statistics.
Yeah.
You just look at the back of Vinny P's baseball card and you're like, oh, this guy's terrible. Why'd they even call him up? His expected WOBA is 439. He's been crushing the ball since being called up, but he's got a 130 BABIP. So it looks like he's been terrible.
Yeah. Right.
I think at 2,800, he's one of my favorite value plays. He would have been even better had Witt still been out and he was still hitting cleanup, but you take him at 6 too.
The funny thing is I was actually looking at Savale because obviously his ERA is over 7. And I was like, okay, well, what's his expected ERA? It's over 5. So he's been, basically as bad as advertised. So then I was going through his first time, second time, and third time through the order. It gets worse every single time.
Oh yeah.
First time through the order, 5.14 ERA. Second time, 6.05. Third time through the order, only 5 2/3 innings. He's done this. 17.47.
Jeez. So you're saying Whit Merrifield's going to hit a home run in the 5th inning off of Aaron Savale?
I'm saying this is a great other first 5 bet over that you can take with these 2 teams. It's been something for him because I was actually trying to. I was honestly going through Savali's game log and it's like, okay, it's been a few bad games that he's had. And then I'm like, okay, it's actually just been pretty bad overall. Because in the beginning of the season, he had back-to-back games. I think it was against the Yankees and some other bum team, but it was 6 runs in a row. And then it was kind of okay after that. Then he started it, but he's just been terrible. all in all, I looked way too much into Arrizabalaga, so I wanted to at least feel like I didn't waste all my time looking into him. What do you think about I should say this question a little bit better, but the Yankees tonight have a odd looking lineup going against Connor Siebold, and it's a cheap, affordable Yankees team, if we're being quite honest, right? Carpenter hitting third, 3,700. LeMahieu's at 4,500. Gleyber Torres at 4,100. Donaldson's only 3,800, but he really actually hasn't been that great. Hicks batting sixth at 2,500. Like, it's coming to the point where you just basically stack the Yankees on just the team name alone, right? They win all the time. They're putting up a ton of runs. Is this a team that you're still stacking tonight? Because when you look at the matchup, it's like, okay, no brainer. Yankees should win this one. Then they put out this lineup, and now I'm like, I don't know. I
mean, it looked pretty bad last night too, and then they still score 6 runs.
Right.
I don't know. I think Siebold, he's probably not as bad as the worst game he's thrown this season, and he's not as good as the best game he's thrown this season, and there've only been 2 games. So it's kind of hard to hold anything against him, but obviously this Yankees lineup does sort of remind you of the Jays lineup that gave him a lot of trouble in that game in Toronto.
Yeah.
It's tough with no Stanton. That's a really big piece missing, obviously. But like you said, it's just so oddly affordable to stack the middle of this lineup. And especially, big picture, if we're talking about a lineup that's starting with 2 pitchers sub 8,500, Aaron Judge's salary doesn't start looking so bad because you didn't pay $10,000 for your SP1 tonight. So
right.
I think Judge could be pretty popular just because of that, because so many people are not paying up for pitchers. I think Carpenter could be pretty popular too, especially considering he's got that multi-position eligibility. Yep. You don't have to sacrifice at first base for Matt Carpenter. You can stick him in as your third outfielder. That's really nice. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel saying the Yankees are a great team, but pretty much every night, if you want to stack the Yankees, you're probably not going about it the wrong way.
Is this an opportunity to use Siebold in a tournament?
Again, I would just think with, he did have a surprising amount of swing and miss. I would say his swinging strike rate is not what I would think it was going to be. So maybe he does have some sneaky strikeout upside, but again, I think when you're going to have like Nestor Cortez below 5%, when you're going to have John Gray below 5%, I just think there's so many other ways to go where, again, I'm not valuing ownership too much when it comes to pitching, aside from, as we've said a couple times now, just absolutely fading Lucas Giolito.
One last team I wanted to bring up, excuse me, was the Atlanta Braves going against Eric Fetty, who's been surprisingly pitching much better.
He's all right.
Eric Fetty was a guy that was like, oh, he's pitching tonight. Perfect. I know I'm going to get a ton of walks and I'm going to get a ton of guys on bases, and that's where I'm going to go. In reality, in this game, maybe I'm not stacking the Braves. Maybe I'm stacking the Nationals against Charlie Morton as a, big field tournament stack that I know is not going to have very little to none ownership. But you look at the numbers from Morton, nothing too impressive. His strikeout numbers have been fine, giving up more home runs than he's used to. Walks have been up a little bit, and the fly balls have been way up. That's what kind of caught my attention. His fly ball rate's up to 37%. If the season ended today, that would be the highest of his career. And thus, in turn, that means your ground balls are also down to 37%. Also would be a career low for him if the season ended today. Now, this Nationals lineup is not exactly full of, hangers and bangers, as I like to say, but against someone like Charlie Morton, who I don't have a lot of faith in to begin with, and you're not paying up for pitchers, you don't really have to worry about salary, but another really affordable stack tonight against someone who's been subpar at best this year.
Yeah. And, there's a pretty clear path as to what you would stack if you wanted to go about that. I mean, Morton has struggled primarily with left-handed bats.
Right.
So you've got Cesar Hernandez, you've got Juan Soto, obviously, you've got Josh Bell, you've got Luis Garcia. If you want to throw Nelly Cruz in there too, fine. He's been a lot better the past 6 weeks than he was to start the season. I will say there's a little bit of that with Morton though too. I think some of his overall numbers are still dragged down by a really bad April.
Yeah.
And in a way, I don't want to forgive him for that, but with the shortened spring training, I think that hits guys differently. And I would expect that someone of Charlie Morton's age probably needed a real spring training. So maybe you can kind of wipe away some of the concerns, but like you said, home runs have been an issue this season for Morton more than they've ever been. So it's not like stacking Juan Soto, Josh Bell, and Nelson Cruz is ever like that bad an idea, especially if no one else is going to be doing it.
Against lefties this season, Morton has a 361 WOBA, 4.74 FIP, 4.3 walks per 9 inning, and a 1.6 home run per 9 inning. That production has primarily come against lefties, and as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lefties in this lineup tonight, if you count the switch hitters who should be batting lefty against him. So there's just something to consider there too as well. All right, let's move over to the sportsbook side. Both you and I wrote up sportsbook articles today. I have my hit on MLB Central. What is your favorite play for tonight?
So we talked about ASHBY already.
Yep.
We talked about the White Sox already. So I would say those are probably my two favorite plays, but just for the purposes of being a little different, let's talk about, I'm just bringing it up here. Let's talk about that Guardians Royals game one more time. I know we love our total bases bets, especially if we can get them at plus money. Was thinking about Vinny P for a little bit because he was plus 120 at over 1.5, but now he's hitting 6. So that's a little tougher. I think I'm just going to go with Jose Ramirez over 1.5 total bases at plus 110. As I mentioned, a lot of the struggles we've seen with Savale have been against left-handed batters. He struggled a lot, with Brady Singer have been against left-handed batters. He's struggled immensely in his last 6 starts. And, sometimes we make this so much about the pitcher. We can make this about the hitter. You'd think looking at Jose Ramirez, someone who's having like an MVP caliber season, he doesn't have any weaknesses. He's been so much better as a left-handed bat than he's been against as a right-handed bat. So anytime you're thinking about using Jose Ramirez in DFS or using him as part of a total bases prop or a home run prop, make sure he's facing a right-handed pitcher because his numbers have been otherworldly against righties. But he's been pretty middle of the road against lefties. So I just like how this kind of plays out tonight, even with Ramirez in a little bit of a slump as of late, especially at plus money.
One of my favorite plays tonight is taking total bases, like we were just saying, but going with Ryan Mountcastle to go over 1.5 bases tonight. You were getting that at plus money. It was plus 105 this morning. Just checking to see where we're at now with that. If I can find his name. Am I blind? There he is at, oh my goodness. It's minus 120. Woo,
there we go.
Wow. The news is out. There's no news about Ryan Mountcastle has been given anymore. But this is somebody that I was talking about in the beginning of the season. His on the surface numbers were putrid. His advanced numbers, like his expecting batting average, was like almost 80 points higher at one point. It was absolutely insane, the amount of bad luck that he was getting into. But his power numbers, especially, have been up immensely since we entered June. 15 doubles, 8 home runs. Since the calendar turned to June, already 4 doubles this month in 6 games. He's been hitting a ton for extra bases so far, really since summer has started. So giving him at over 1.5 bases. I also don't hate taking the Phillies on the run line, minus 1.5 at plus 140 with Zach Wheeler going against Adam Wainwright. And we talked about this earlier. The Cardinals offense has just gone so cold, so abruptly too. Going up against Zach Wheeler, who has better numbers at home, admittedly, not as good on the road. But if this Cardinals offense has another night like it's had for the past week or so, winning this game by 2 runs should not be an issue for the Phillies. And they just saw Zach Wheeler in his last start, 7 shutout innings in that game. We talked about it at the top of the show a little bit there. So I don't hate getting the plus 140 against the Cardinals tonight on the run line.
Yep. I don't mind that one. I guess we got to talk about the elephant in the room. We've got our 2 favorite teams going up against each other tonight. I think I like Seattle on the money line tonight. We did just get the Blue Jays lineup and George Springer's in it, which one of my rationale when talking about this morning on the sweat was Springer's looked a little banged up lately. He's missed the last 2 games. Would he play tonight? If he doesn't, that obviously affects the depth of the Jays lineup. So The Jays seem like they have their A team going out tonight. So that does hurt this case a little bit. But I think when you look at it, Ross Stripling versus George Kirby, obviously Kirby's had some ups and downs, but I think you'd rather have Kirby in that particular situation. That's even before getting into the bullpens for these two teams. Seattle has a clear advantage in that regard. And then just kind of the way these two teams are trending. The Jays are 1-6 in their last 7 games. Seattle is 13-3 in their last 16. If you're basically getting them as a pick'em at home,
yeah.
And I know there's some weird stuff with this actually being a home game for Seattle. It's probably more like 50-50, but I just think you want to take the Mariners tonight. That's kind of the way things are trending.
Is that an easy trip, Toronto to Seattle?
Vancouver to Seattle.
See, I'm not up with Canada stuff.
You're going to get a lot of Jays fans in Mariners games and in Twins games and in Tigers games.
All right, I want to wrap this up tonight with just some futures talk. Lamarca and I do this a lot too, so I want to do it with you just a little bit here. I want to go to the Rookie of the Year conversation. I think it's fair to say in the odds show that Julio's got this wrapped up, right? Barring anything strange, barring an injury, I don't see how Pena can catch up at this point. Especially when you start throwing out stats like Rodriguez got to 15 home runs and 20 steals faster than guys like Barry Bonds, right? When you start throwing stuff like that out there, that's going to sit with people. They're going to get it. Is there any value at this point at taking him at minus 285? And I kind of compare this to draft props, like betting on the draft, where it's like, or you feel very strongly that somebody's going to go number 1 overall, right? And maybe it's at like minus 285. And you're like, well, if I know he's going to go, or I feel very strong that he's going to go, I can take the juice here and bet it again. Because if I think he's going to win, then this number is just going to get higher and higher. Like, what if he gets to 350 or what if he gets to 400? Do you still think there's some value in taking Julio Rodriguez at minus 285 from what you've seen so far? Because truly, I honestly feel, and this is not because he's on Seattle, I would say it's on any team that he's on. I truly feel like he basically has this wrapped up unless he gets hurt or unless he misses extended time. Because there's really nobody else, with the exception of maybe Bobby Witt Jr., that I would worry about. That's the only guy I worry about is Bobby Witt Jr., who I would say is a tremendous value at 14-1 right now. But I'm also hesitant because I really, truly believe Rodriguez has it wrapped up.
Yeah, so that was the one thing I was going to say is just as in a general sense, I'm not generally one to bet minus 285 on a boat that I've already missed. I feel like for a lot of us, you've just kind of missed the boat to bet Julio Rodriguez. It's unfortunate. Do I think there's a very good chance he wins? Yeah. Would I say you're right in your assessment that injuries aside, he is going to win this award? I would think so. But Bobby Witt was the one name that I would say, if you're looking for a shot in the dark bet, and maybe 14-1 is not even enough if we're being honest, but
sure,
it's a decent number. It is funny though, because they have very similar trajectories for this season. Julio threw a little bit of like umpire chicanery. I know he was getting just absolutely killed by umpires in the first month of the season, but had a pretty slow April and started to turn it around at the beginning of May and had that huge month of May. And it's the reason he's won back-to-back Rookie of the Month awards. And I think that's a pretty good indication of where things are as well, because Bobby Witt Jr., same thing, didn't hit a single home run for the entirety of April. Now he's hit 12 going back to May 1st. But even in that span of time, he's only got like a 117 WRC plus, only, in quotation marks. But Rodriguez has been so much better than him, even though Witt's been playing his best baseball of the season for the past 2 months. And in that same span of time, in direct competition for awards, we've seen Rodriguez bring down both of them. So I don't know. Again, if you believe in the talent of Bobby Witt, maybe there's still a lot more to come. Maybe he has a massive month of July or a massive month of August. But I also think Julio could just match that. So I don't think there's a lot of betting interest left here with the American League Rookie of the Year.
And this is why I never bet Rookie of the Year candidates super early, because the, quote unquote, 2 favorites when after the first couple of weeks were Steve Kwan, 100-1 now. And where's Suzuki? I got to go down the list way down here as well. In the National League.
14-1.
Where is he? Is he 14-1?
Still the 5th best odds, but yeah.
No shot with Suzuki either. No way. Nope, not with Strider, not with Gore. Michael Harris, by the way, what? Why does he really deserve the second best odds?
I mean, he's hitting over 300.
No, I know.
And he's had a weird, like, his call up sort of coincides with the Braves turning things around. Like, it's a very, and he plays amazing defense. Like, you know, there's a case to be built, but I think Strider, I don't know. Are they going to split votes? That's going to be weird. No, I would actually say this is an opportunity to bet Strider, because for as good as O'Neal Cruz has looked on highlights, I think the current slash line we're going to see from Cruz, he's going to hit about 200 this season. Like, he's just got a lot of holes in his swing. Like, it's funny when I was looking at numbers earlier today, and it's tough to hold like left on left against a guy, especially a young left-handed hitter. That's always going to be an area of weakness. He's struck out in like 55% of his plate appearances against Southpaws this season. Like, there's a chance that they're just going to platoon him for like the remainder of the year, which is going to cut down his counting stats as well. So I think Strider's in a really nice spot because, I mean, heck, he could have like Cy Young votes if he keeps pitching the way he's been pitching. So plus 300 might be something to jump on here.
Yeah, no doubt. Cruz was a favorite, I think, a week ago. And I'll tell you what the big favorite is right now is that this show is going to end. We're going to wrap up right now. Up next on the Madden stream, we got Pats and Broncos coming up. My team got everything ready early to make sure that I knew ahead of time so that I didn't trash them publicly and saying how they don't do their jobs and don't get that game to me, which they usually never do, but they learned their lesson. And now you know what's coming up next. Make sure to get your lineups in that. Make sure to get your lineups in for MLB baseball tonight. Good luck with your bets. Good luck with your lineups. For Gary and Thorne, I'm Steve Buchanan. See you next week. 2016 AFC title game.